So in the last couple of days, the results of the world's largest trial of a 4-day work week have been released. And this was truly spectacular. It involved 61 companies, over 2,900 employees and staff, as well as 2 full months of preparation. Now, what was exceptional about this trial was that, firstly, pay had to be maintained at 100%. And secondly, the companies were able to diversify how they employed and implemented their 4-day work week. There was the classic Friday off model, the staggered model, the decentralized model, the annualized model, as well as conditional structures. For instance, if you don't complete your work or the agreed upon amount of work in the 4 days, then you don't get 4 days off. But what was most interesting and unique to see was that those conducting the trial wanted to emphasize and prioritize seeing if employees themselves exhibited a meaningful reduction in work time. Each company designed a policy tailored to its particular industry, organizational challenges, departmental structures, and work culture. And let me tell you, contrary to popular belief, as well as based on my own very low expectations, the results were truly shocking. This was a fully fledged success, well and truly successful. In fact, the trial was such a resounding success that of the 61 companies that partook, 56 of them are going to continue with the trial, that is with the 4-day work week, with 18 of them confirming that they are actually going to implement these changes permanently. It was also found that over 70% of employees had reduced levels of burnout. Likewise, levels of anxiety, fatigue, and sleep issues decreased, while mental and physical health both improved. And so what of companies' revenue, you may ask? Well, interestingly enough, revenue stayed pretty stable or increased. Companies' revenue rose by 1.4% on average. And probably most importantly, and also quite unique to the modern workforce and the gig economy that we find ourselves in, employees' turnover rate decreased by 57%. 15% of employees said that no amount of money would induce them to accept a 5-day schedule over the 4-day week to which they were now accustomed. So what is my evaluation of this? Well, I think my evaluation is typically going to be quite positive, but I think that there are some negatives that need to be considered and that were not considered, at least not in the data that was published recently. Firstly, this trial was truly exceptional. It was exceptional in that it was a coordinated social, cultural, business, private and public effort. In terms of implementing something meaningful for people, for the majority of people, this was exceptional. And this was so important, I think, just for the morale of everyday people, for the morale of where our workforce and society can move toward. This truly represented people over bureaucracy, because for too long, modern work and the modern workforce has been subsumed in bureaucratic reckoning with this management structure and organization of people and employees in a way that just does not make sense. If you question higher management, the answer is, well, because I say so. There is clearly a waste of talent, of skill, and of time because people are too scared to go against the bureaucratic mechanisms that make everything go in this sort of glacial pace toward profit. And I think the reason why people were able to come before bureaucracy in the implementation of this trial is because it was multinational, it was global, and it was something that was done in consensus with the whole, or at least a vast percentage of society and sectors. The 4-day work week campaign is a campaign in the UK that has gone global, and over the past 2 years it has done remarkable work. Unilever in New Zealand has implemented a 4-day work week. Microsoft in Japan has done the same. The government in Valencia, Spain, has begun recruiting for its own pilot, a region-wide pilot. Extensive research has been conducted by think tanks such as the New Economics Forum, Women's Budget Group, and the the Institute for Public Policy Research. The 10-minute rule bill in the UK is currently or has been discussed in the House of Commons, and the Scottish Government has also been promoting and been supportive of nationwide pilot schemes. And I think this is working because there are so many intersecting institutions and interests with an incentive to see this work, and an incentive to actually prove and demonstrate that a 4-day work week can actually be just as, if not more, productive and profitable than our current system. And this is encouraging, especially considering that productivity and skilled labor are down, and also considering the Great Resignation, people being very much disenchanted with work, a changing mentality and psychology around work, at least since the lockdowns. It was especially interesting to see in the implementation of the world's largest ever trial of the 4-day work week, not just why a 4-day work week is a good idea and can be effective, but even more importantly, how to actually implement it. And the data was extensive. It wasn't just quantitative, that is based on administrative, business-focused data, such as the key metrics of how effective something was, the key metrics of money and finance and how much was made, but also a focus on people. What I also liked was seeing the emphasis on looking at the perspectives from the shop floor, that is employee-focused data. Throughout this trial, extensive qualitative interviews were held. And these interviews were not just with managers and CEOs, but with workers themselves. Overall, the confidence and the fortitude of this study is what is most commendable. And I think this effectively shows that when the interests of a business and their employees are aligned, when there is actual dialogue and communication between them, shit can get done. And now onto the things that I'm not so optimistic about. In reading the findings, which were published by one of the main researchers into this trial, Autonomy, a research organization focused on the future of work, especially in advanced economies, the emphasis all around was in enhancing productivity. And I think this points to something that wasn't raised, of course, in the results and in the findings of this trial, but that is quite present and quite topical, namely biotechnology and AI featuring more heavily in our everyday lives and in the workplace. Alongside the growing awareness and advocacy for the 4-day work week, technology that is highly invasive is emerging alongside these changes. Earpods to tell whether a person is paying attention or whether their mind is wandering are already being employed in some businesses.
9 out of 10 employees waste time during the workday. They focus on other things. There may be good reasons why we want to be able to find better ways to monitor whether somebody is paying attention or they're doing something different. The newest way to monitor attention is through a device like this one. These are ear pods that are launching later this year. These ear pods, much like the video you watched earlier, are ear pods that can pick up brainwave activity and tell whether or not a person is paying attention or their mind is wandering. Okay, well, you might think, fine, but even if we can tell whether a person is paying attention or their mind is wandering, you can't tell what they're paying attention to. You would be wrong. Turns out that you can not only tell whether a person is paying attention or their mind is wandering, but you can discriminate between the kinds of things that they're paying attention to. Whether they're doing something like central tasks like programming, peripheral tasks like writing documentation, or unrelated tasks like surfing social media or online browsing. When you combine brainwave activity together with other forms of software and surveillance technology, the power becomes quite precise. So what do we do with this? What do we do with technology that enables us to monitor brainwave activity for attention? Do we embrace it? Do we resist it? I believe that there is a pathway forward with such technology, but it's putting it in the hands of employees, enabling them to use it for themselves as a choice, whether or not they want to focus, whether or not they want the technology in order to improve their own performance, but not using it as a measure of their brain metrics to decide whether to fire them, hire them, or to watch for their lagging cognitive decline over time and using it as a way to discriminate against them.
This can all be bracketed as surveillance of productivity that is becoming a reality very quickly. And all of this makes me wonder if this is merely a trade-off. In short, the trade-off being, we now only need you for 4 days because we have found very inventive and very invasive ways of monitoring, quite literally, your productivity. And based on the diversity of options which companies could have for introducing a 4-day work week, many companies, I'm quite sure, will implement this based on conditionality, an agreed level of productivity that has to be met. And who knows if the bar for productivity will remain stable and consistent. If there is ultimately more money to be made, well, who knows? I also have some demographic critiques of this pilot study. Firstly, I thought it was interesting that 68% of participants had an undergraduate degree or higher. Now, I think this is important considering that roughly 87% of the UK population do not have a bachelor's degree. The industries that partook in this pilot were all high-skilled industries. Industries dominated by the private sector. And in line with this, 66% of the companies who partook in the pilot had 25 employees or less. I think it is very likely that the success of this trial is due to the fact that it was kept within a very particular demographic, a very particular skill set, a very particular section of the market. There also wasn't a lot of diversity, not just racially. 90% of those who partook in this pilot were white, but also in terms of family types. 70% were married or cohabiting, and 52% of them had a child. When it comes to the increase in single-person households, when it comes to the fact that a lot of younger generations are not having children or having children a lot later, it's not terribly representative of the diversity of the modern labor force. I think what we will potentially see with the potential implementation of the 4-day work week is that it will primarily focus around and be the privilege of, well, the privileged. People who work in high-skilled industries and sectors, who have a bachelor's degree or higher, who have a partner and children, who work in small, closely knit communities and sectors, in small businesses where there can be a focus on individuality, on creating a viable work-life balance. And so yes, I do see this as something that could potentially be incredibly positive, but I think at least for now, it's definitely going to be something that a very small section of the modern population gets to enjoy to the fullest. But this most definitely gives me hope insofar as a sort of global initiative to make a real improvement to something that is really central to the lives of just everybody. And I think it gives me hope that education can be next. Modern public education is archaic and stuck in the industrial era. Its marketization and bureaucratic ineptitude has completely decimated creativity or lateral thinking. It fails more children than it benefits. It demotivates and is, in my opinion, rather a slap in the face to really great teachers and educators. It would be interesting to see whether a 4-day school week could be implemented and what that would mean, whether governments have the incentive and the interest to try and implement something as risky as this. Unfortunately, I don't see the incentive as being there at the present time, but I think at least this can instigate conversation around it. The only real attempt so far at trying to confront the bureaucratic beast that is public education has been in France in the primary school sector. That is a 24-hour week with a half day on Wednesday, or in some cases, no school on Wednesday. But of course, with this, a lot of things would have to change. A lot of things that I don't think we are, as a society, at least ready to have conversations about. Most notably, examinations. But these findings most definitely surprised me, and it is encouraging. And I think that this can be something quite quite encouraging for the direction and the future of modern work. But I'd be very interested to hear what you think about this. Are you optimistic about these changes, these potential changes, which seem to be taking at least the private sector and these particular industries in the UK by storm? Or are you a little bit more skeptical? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see all of you very soon in the next one.